Welcome to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes, the podcast with hot takes on food media.
We interview popular chefs and food personalities, sample all kinds of food media, and try cooking challenges in our own kitchens.
Let's dig in. Hey, it's Justine.
And it's me, Meg. Today we have a very special interview for you on Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes. It may be our most special interview yet. We are here with Mary. Mary is an accomplished home chef and cooking competition extraordinaire. She's a 3-time Pillsbury Bake-Off contestant, a National Beef Cook-Off Grand Prize winner, and she's my mom. Mary is here to talk with us today about recipe contests and cook-offs. Mary, welcome.
Hey, it's fun being here today. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yay, I'm so happy Mary's here. She's also told me that she's our biggest fan. So.
Yeah, she's probably our number one listener. She's our podcast mom.
That's a special thing to be a podcast mom.
Definitely. All right, so let's get it started. Mom, can you tell the listener a little bit about what types of cooking contests you enter and how that process generally works?
Well, that's a good question, and I started entering cooking contests when I was about 11 years old, mostly because I liked cooking, and I liked experimenting in the kitchen, and I would tell my parents to stay out of the kitchen while I made things, and whatever I cooked I thought was wonderful, but the contest I entered, which was generally the Pillsbury Bake-Off at that time, they didn't think so, but I just kept entering and entering. So that was many years ago. And I guess the big breakthrough was, the one I only really entered was the Pillsbury Bake-Off. And then maybe, 20 to 30 years after my first attempts, and every year, I still kept entering. And I was taking my entries out in an envelope to the mailbox, and I had the entries in my hand. And my husband looked at me and said, almost with disgust, "You're not really entering that again, are you?"
Oh, no.
And I said, yes, I am. And it was that year that I was finally picked as a finalist. So that was really fun, and that was the breakthrough, I think. And I thought, even though at the contest I didn't win anything in terms of a monetary prize, that told me if I can enter and win once, I can do it again. So that was the start of the roller coaster of cooking contest.
Perseverance pays off.
Yes, it does. You got that right.
Yeah. About how many cooking competitions have you won prizes for?
She has a sheet of
Check
all
your
of her
notes.
winnings in front of her. I've seen it.
I'm going to say, I don't know, between 100 and 125, something like that.
Oh my gosh.
And those are winnings. Those aren't just ones that she's entered.
Correct.
Wow.
Those are ones that I've actually won. Entered a whole lot more because, you don't win every time. And, I'm sure you've heard the saying, and so have your listeners, if you throw a plate of spaghetti against the wall, eventually a noodle's going to stick. So you just keep trying.
You're not going to win if you don't enter. And I feel like I've heard that advice also given to like many other like competitions or giveaways, that like the more you just keep trying and submitting, like you're going to win something eventually.
Well, a lot of people will say to me, "Oh, Mary, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. You win all the time." Well, yes, there is an element of luck, but it's more than that. It's knowing the sponsor in terms of looking at what do they want. Going to their website, seeing what kind of recipes they create, thinking about that and trying to figure out what they are looking for. And that was a big key, and that really did help me. However, there are some, heck, I still can't figure out what they're looking for, but that was the key for a long time.
So on that topic, explain to the listener a little bit who puts on these cooking contests. Who are the people awarding the prize money, and what's in it for them?
Generally speaking, it would be a food company of some sort, or it might be cooking equipment, such as a certain brand of pots or pans or appliances. But typically speaking, it would be food companies. And what they were looking for, is not, oh, let's be nice to the consumer and let them have some fun and give them some money. That's really not the point. The point is to get people interested in their product, trying their product, buying their product to enter the contest, and then once they would publicize the contest and the winning recipes, that people would go out and be so enthused about that particular recipe or recipes that they would buy the products. Bottom line, they wanted to increase their product sales. So that's really what they were looking for. And
it's a win-win
it's
because you got to buy their product
right,
anyway
right.
to make
Yes.
it.
However, I will confess there are a few times that I have made the recipe in my head without trying it and entered those,
We're calling the cooking contest place on here.
Now, I will say, though, in the last, I don't know, I want to say 10 years or so, cooking contests have changed. This was a vehicle for companies, as I said, to market their product, to increase their sales. And I would think that they have found that that's just not the way to go anymore. And a lot of companies that had annual or biannual contests have stopped doing so. It was expensive. They didn't feel they were getting their money's worth in terms of marketing and publicity and therefore bottom line product sales. So either they've stopped doing it or have changed how they're doing it and doing more marketing on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So there aren't as many contests to enter anymore. But I still keep entering.
Okay, so while we're talking about prizes, what was the biggest prize you've won or the best prize you've won, even if it was a small thing?
I would say that there were two that were fairly equal. One for Or Wheat bread. They had a contest to create a sandwich, and I won the grand prize in that, and that was $30,000 cash.
Wow.
Another one that was fairly equal to that in terms of monetary value was a brand new Ford Ranger truck, all decked out, along with barbecue and cooking utensils and some cash to help pay for the taxes. So those were probably the two highest value ones that I won in terms of money.
Wow.
A big shiny red truck.
A big shiny red truck. Yes, I love that truck. So
Now, you said you recalled your first contest was when you were 11? About
when
then?
I started entering, yes, but did not win, of course, or be a finalist.
Do you remember what the recipe was for?
Oh, I do actually. It was for oatmeal raisin cookies.
Ooh.
And when you think about it, that's really not very original, but I thought they were great.
Nice.
That's probably why Pillsbury didn't pick you right away.
That's right. That's right. It was a little too boring.
But as you said, Pillsbury did eventually bite, and you went on to become a contestant in the Pillsbury Bake-Off 3 separate times.
3 separate
So,
times, yes.
Yeah, what were those experiences like? And if you want to share anything about those recipes that...
Actually, oh my gosh, those were amazingly fun because early on there would be 100 finalists from all around the country, and boy, they were just plain fun. They did it up big, and they paid for everything: your airfare, your hotel accommodations, your meals, incidentals. So it was great to get a trip out of it. And the first one, actually, one of my loves is Disney and Disneyland. And the first Pillsbury Bake-Off that I was invited to was in Disney World. So that was just fantastic. It was just so much fun. And they really do it up big in terms of journalists. They fly food journalists in from around the country and do it up real big. And there's a lot of fanfare, and they have parties, and they feed you with these extravagant meals. And then when the cook-off actually comes, you're in a room with 100 stoves and small kitchen setups. They provide all the food and materials, and you're under a timeline. So you are there, you started, and they want you to make it at least 2 times. One is for photography, and one would be for judging. And they ask if you have time and the inclination to make it 3 times, and then leave that one out near your station for people to sample. So they would really do it up big, and the parties were so much fun. Win, lose, or draw. They were great trips. And then the thing that was really kind of very interesting, they would televise the final announcement of who won. And they would, interview people while you're cooking. And there are things that happen that, you're already rushed. You're hot from cooking. There are all these stoves going around you. You're thinking, oh, there's big money on the line. And I remember one time I had my dish in the oven, and they were interviewing the person next to me. So they decided it would be a good idea to set up their equipment right in front of my oven. No. And when I noticed that, and I thought, oh, I need to get them out. And I thought, hey, what's this in front of my oven? I said, you need to move your stove. And they did, but they scowled at me greatly. But there are always those kind of challenges that you don't expect. And then, as I said, the final thing would be televised on, I can't remember which network carried it, ABC, CBS, NBC, but one of those big networks. And they would televise it, and they would keep everything secret. Like all the reporters and journalists would be there. And I think they already knew who won. So as you would enter the room where they were doing the televised set, they walked you like in lines, and had, I won't say guards, but they had people with you so that you wouldn't talk to the journalist. So while you were waiting too, this was really odd. If you had to use the restroom before the televised event started, they had to go with you.
Well, not into the stall.
Not into the stall. No, not into the stall. But they would take like groups of 6 people into the restroom, and they'd have somebody there because they didn't want you talking to a journalist.
Wow.
They wanted it all to be secret. And I remember one thing that happened that was really, I thought, hilarious. Okay, they took a group of us into the restroom, and one woman was in the stall, and she couldn't get out. And we were the last group to go to the restroom before they started it. And remember, like it would be at a certain time, like 11 in the morning. It started. It was live. And she could not get out of the stall. And the security person who was there saying, come on, we got to get into, the amphitheater. You got to go. This poor woman could not get out.
Like the door was jammed?
The door was jammed. She could not get out. She eventually had to get on the floor and slide on her belly to get out.
At least all the cooking had been done by that point.
Yeah, all the cooking had been done the day before. So, and then they try to keep the suspense up as they announce who is going to win and such. But I went 3 times, and 3 times is the limit. You cannot go any more than that. Wow. So after that, there would be no reason for me to enter anymore. And I know during the last one, the grand prize had gone up to $1 million. And so I'm thinking, this is my chance. This is my chance to be rich. And what they do is, they kind of tell you where to sit in certain groups. Yeah. And so they have you sitting there. And the camera people, as they were setting up, you could tell that they were zeroing in on certain sections. And I saw the cameraman in the aisle, and I thought, he's got it zeroed in on me. Does that mean that I won something? Well, he had it zeroed in on the person next to me. So. But it was always fun. It was always a blast. And, with Pillsbury and with other contests too, you get to go to destinations you might not otherwise go to. And with your expenses paid.
Yeah.
Which was very nice. And years ago, and I'm going back years, I don't know whether the tax laws changed or the accountancy departments of the sponsors looked at the taxes differently. But early on, even if you didn't win anything, of course, there's the cost of airfare, meals, hotel. That was, gratis. That was given to you. So you weren't taxed on it. But then somewhere along the line, something changed. As I said, maybe tax laws or the way they were looking at it. Then anything you got was valued. In other words, market value was put on it, and you had to pay taxes on that.
Oh.
So if, early on, it was a prize in and of itself just to go on a trip. But later on, if you were going somewhere and they weren't paying for anything, you had to calculate in your head, okay, if airfare is going to cost me this much, hotel's going to cost me this much, and the grand prize is only maybe $5,000, is it worth it to me to have to pay the taxes on everything, particularly if I don't win?
Yeah.
Then I'm actually out money. So that changed also.
Did they give you per diems?
No.
Yeah.
Because they took care of all your meals and any entertainment and such.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. What a change. Well, you mentioned destinations. Where were some of your favorite destination cook-offs?
Well, it wasn't actually my favorite, but it was someplace I always wanted to go, and that was New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really a blast to be able to see New York City. And actually, contest took me to New York City 4 times.
Wow.
So that was fun. But Disney World was a blast because it was Disney World.
And because you had great company, right?
That one I went by myself.
I know, but the other Disney World one.
There was another Disney trip. And yes, that great company was none other than me. And I think we had a fun time on that trip. So that was great.
I mean, that was my favorite prize of yours because I was in high school and we'd had a mother-daughter trip to Disney World, and it was a lot of fun. And part of that was also, there used to be this thing called the Disney Institute at Disney World, and they would have professionals who worked for Disney teach classes. And so part of the prize was one of the Disney chefs taught us how to make jam and what was it? Some sort of chocolate dessert.
And apple tart tatin.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And a chocolate something. I don't remember what it was, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my favorite destination prize of yours.
There we go. I think one of my favorites was, and I've had several trips there with contests, to Napa Valley, the wine country, Napa Valley. Those were always very relaxing and beautiful, and just the surroundings were so nice there. And Chicago was fun because I used to live in Chicago.
Wow.
Nice.
So it was fun to go back to
Justine.
visit Chicago.
That's right.
Justine's a fellow Chi-Town.
Oh, okay. All right. But yeah, there were a lot of fun destinations. Some that were, but
So you mentioned how you had to get the TV crew out of the way of your oven. You've also, in other cook-offs, had to cook with a broken arm. And
yes,
I believe there was one of your New York cooking contests where you were all evacuated from the building because of a fire.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
So
yeah.
What has been the most surprising thing to happen to you at a cooking contest?
The most surprising was probably the event in New York City. It was a cook-off for Paul Newman's products. And the event was Lunch with Paul Newman at the Rainbow Room. And we didn't, which was kind of nice. And the winnings didn't actually go to you as the contestant, but to the nonprofit of your choice. So, and I think there were only 5 of us that were finalists. So it would be, fairly intimate. But when we got there to the studios, the building was on fire. So
casual.
So we waited around outside, but they still wanted to go ahead with the event. So, and this is kind of bittersweet, they send us to the top floor where the restaurant is located in the World Trade Center, which of course is no longer there. And they sent us over there. And myself and my husband and another couple, we were the first ones to get to the World Trade Center, and we're waiting and waiting and waiting, and nobody else is showing up. And so finally somebody comes and tells us, we're back in the Rainbow Room again. They've controlled the fire, and they say the firefighters say it's safe to go in. And we thought, okay. And the couple we were with, the gentleman was actually a firefighter. So we thought, well, we have to go back in the building. It's, pretty good. We've got a firefighter going up there with us. So we did go to the Rainbow Room eventually. And that was also memorable because the way it was set up is Paul Newman was sitting in the front, and he had like the 5 dishes in front of him that the chefs had prepared. And he would taste each one, and he would determine who the winner was. Well, he was very upfront and said he didn't feel good. And he didn't look good. You could tell he didn't feel good at all. And the chefs didn't quite prepare mine correctly. Mine was a Southwestern style cioppino with a tomatillo salsa that you were supposed to put on top and stir in. What they did was they created the cioppino and stacked up all the seafood on a plate and put the tomatillo relish or salsa, whatever you want to call it, on top. Well, when Paul Newman tasted mine, all he tasted was the salsa. Mm-hmm. And he made a really ugly face. He hated it. You could tell that. So I thought, okay, well, it's the way that goes. But even being a finalist, the nonprofit of my choice still got $10,000.
Oh, nice.
So that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. Yes, indeed.
Wow, what a story.
that was very interesting. And too, as Meg mentioned, there was the one where I broke my arm 2 days before I was headed to Florida. And this was a trip where I was only going by myself because they only paid for the contestant. Yeah. And so literally I couldn't use my one arm very well. And it was kind of weird. For a moment I debated not going, and I thought, oh, what the heck, I'm going. Yeah. But I had to rethink actually packing my suitcase because I was going to take 2 small suitcases, but I thought I can't carry 2 suitcases. So everything kind of got minimized and packed into 1 suitcase and got there. And the final cooking, and I believe there were 8 of us, I believe, you had a very limited amount of time. I can't remember if it was 45 minutes, but it was a very short amount of time. And you had to do everything yourself. You had somebody there with you who would be watching what you were doing. You had to have everything yourself. Nobody could help you. Well, one of the ingredients was a jar of salsa. Uh-oh. I couldn't open the jar. And so when they had like a briefing beforehand, they were telling us this, and I said, I can't open the jar, And so they had to get special permission from the judges that somebody could open the jar for me. But that one turned out well. I won second prize, which was $10,000.
With a broken arm.
With a broken arm. Yeah. So the recipe was so easy, you could do it with your arm tied behind your head. So.
Yes. Awesome. Tell us about the beef. It's what's for dinner commercial.
Oh, well, They don't use that anymore, but it's odd you should mention that, Justine, because I was watching TV a few nights ago and they use that song again.
Oh,
I haven't heard that in forever.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of crazy just to hear that. But I was in the beef finals, let me think. The one time with the broken arm, another time, and I'll talk about that one, and then a third time.
mm-hmm.
And the thing that was kind of nice about the beef cook-offs, it's done pretty much and organized by volunteers. The National Cattlewomen Association in our local areas, sometimes they're called cowbells or National Cattlewomen, and they do it all themselves, and you would have somebody with you assisting you if need be, not the cooking, they wouldn't do that, but letting you know where everything was. And these volunteers would kindly take their time and do all this, so that was always a nice touch. But I know with one beef contest, my recipe turned out an absolute failure. Total failure. Part of it was my fault, and part of it was the fault of the range I was using. They were gas ranges, and there just wasn't enough gas coming in. So I could not get my skillet hot. So the recipe called for stir-fried beef, and it ended up being steamed beef. And it looked gray, it didn't taste good, and I obviously didn't win anything. But they would have the press interview with the winners after they announced the winners. And I heard back later that they were making fun of my dish. The judges were.
That's not nice.
No, it's not. But oh well, that's the way it goes. And then the third time I was a beef finalist was in Napa Valley. And that one I did win the grand prize in, which was $25,000, I believe.
And that was the beef commercial?
No, it was not.
So which one was? Your beef Caesar salad was in the Beef It's What's for Dinner commercials.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot that. Yes, the one that turned out absolutely terribly, they did use on TV for part of their commercial. It looked gorgeous on TV the way they did it, but mine didn't, so...
You've just won too many things. You can't remember them all.
Well, actually, sometimes I kind of forget, bits and pieces of it. But it was really fun, that last beef one that I did win the grand prize. It was one of those ones where I was trying to think of something unusual that was still quick and easy, and they wanted it to reflect California foods. So it was a beef dish with fresh veggies and marinated bocconcini, which are those very small mozzarella balls.
Wow.
And it turned out beautifully.
Can confirm it tastes great.
Meg, you get to eat all these?
I know, most of them.
Wow.
Many of them, yes. Uh-huh.
So you were telling us the story about how you met Paul Newman. You've also met Alex Trebek and Bobby Flay, to drop just a few names. What was the most memorable celebrity encounter for you? Was it Paul Newman?
Okay. I did not meet Bobby Flay. Okay, as you said, Paul Newman. Let me think. Willard Scott, who used to be the weather forecaster.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm forgetting names. Oh, and Paula Dean's two sons.
Oh.
They were the MCs. They were the host chefs at a Behringer steak contest, and they were so sweet. They were very kind to everyone. With some of these contests, if you have a, quote, celebrity or chef, they're just there because that's their job, and they really don't care about chatting with people or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But they were sweethearts. So you could tell it wasn't put on. They were, being really nice and chatting up with everyone. So I think those were probably the most memorable celebrity individuals that I have met at any of these cook-offs.
And was that also the time when you were at the Cranberry Bog? That was with those two folks, wasn't it?
Wow.
With the Dean brothers, that was in Napa Valley for for Behringer. The Cranberry Bog one was in New York City, and that was Tyler Florence.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, had to think of who that was. But
I knew there was someone attached to the Cranberry Bog.
Yes. And another really sweet personality, and this was in New York City for a Good Housekeeping contest, was Melissa de Arabian, who was the grand prize winner of the Food Network Next Chef contest a number of years back. But she was a real sweetheart, too, in terms of being willing and seemingly happy to chat with people.
Nice. Yeah. Mary, we'll have to compare celebrity chefs one of these days, because I used to work on a daytime talk show which had a cooking segment basically every day. So
okay.
Oftentimes there would be celebrity or quote celebrity chefs.
I won't talk about the ones that weren't very friendly.
We don't talk about them.
But there's something you haven't asked me about, and I will share here. There is a dark side to cooking contests too that people really don't talk about.
Ooh.
And that is cheating, quite frankly. And you think, how do you cheat in a cooking contest? And you think, oh, how would you cheat in a cooking contest? But what happens sometimes is you'll have an individual who's really good at cooking contests and creating recipes, and they're really good at it. And they've won the contest, or they've been at the limit number of times, so they cannot enter anymore. They will create a recipe for a family member, and then the family member enters it and says that they are the ones who created it. So there's that element, which is kind of sad. I mean, you can kind of understand why people do it, but it's still sad because it's the person who is there or who is a contestant is not really the one who created the recipe.
Yeah.
And you might say, well, Mary, how do you know this? Is it just rumor? No, because I've had a couple people tell me who were the ones who created the recipes for the family. Oh, that's my recipe. That's my recipe. Because they were so proud that they were actually
started bragging.
Yes. Yeah. So, which is unfortunate, but
Oof.
it does happen. Or I remember at one, and oftentimes at contests, they will have all the ingredients out for you, except, of course, the perishable and refrigerated ones out the night before for you to look at and make sure this is what you want. And then it would be in a secure room, and everybody's there looking, and then you leave. And then the next day when you go to compete, you go to your station there. I remember one, and it was before, balsamic vinegar is rather commonplace now, but years ago, it was not well known in the American kitchen. And this person used balsamic in their recipe in the days when it really wasn't that well known. And so they had checked their station that night. It was there. The next morning when they went to cook, it was gone.
Uh-oh.
So somebody had taken it. And that can be a very important element of your recipe. So there is that dark side too, where that does happen, sadly.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for Mary's tell-all, the dark side of cooking contests.
Are there any, quote, white whale recipe contests that have eluded you so far?
Yes! Yes, there is.
Oh my gosh.
There are most of the big ones, not so much. There are the ones, some now that I don't enter, even though they might have big prizes, because you have to pay your own expenses. And if you lose, you're out some money, and I'm not rich. But for most of the big ones that have been around, I have been a finalist at some level in. But there is one that has been around for years that has a great prize and a great trip. And that is a burger contest. Sutter Homes Build a Better Burger. Oh. That one has eluded me for years and years and years. I cannot break into that one at all.
But you just entered it last week, right?
I did. So I entered it last week again. Just one entry. So hey, why not? I won't throw in the towel yet. I'll keep trying. So
Listeners, cross your fingers.
Yeah.
yeah, but that is one that I've always wanted to go to and just haven't made the grade.
On that subject, if you can tell us, are there any contests you are currently working on right now?
There are a few that I have just submitted. One was that burger for Sutter Home. There is a blueberry contest that I just submitted last week. There is one, Bella Sanlucci, which has an excellent product, sun-dried tomatoes. They have other products too. Just entered that one last week also. And right now I am working on the Coppola Pizza contest.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
also entering the blueberry contest, so Mom and I will be competing against each other.
Oh my God.
Except we entered in different categories.
Yes,
so.
I'm making a cocktail, of course. Surprise,
Yes.
surprise.
I want this to be like a book, like, oh my God, your stories are so fascinating.
But it's been a blast, I will say that. And people might say, "Oh, how do I do this? How do I do this?"
Yeah, well, how that was literally my next question. How do home cooks enter cooking competitions? Do you have advice? And like literally, how do you find these competitions?
Well, there are ways, but you know something, Justine? I don't think I'm going to share that information because I don't want more people entering. No, I'm just joking.
You're a hoot.
I'm kidding. In the past, it would be snail mail and ink newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
Now you go online and just search, just look. There is also a website, if I can remember the name, Calling All Contestants, I believe, that does list recipe contests, cooking contests, spirits contest, not the spooky kind of Halloween, but, alcoholic
Meg's
spirits.
kind.
My kind of spirit.
Barbecue. So that is a good source of information. There's also cooking contest. I'm spacing out on the last word, which is a paid subscription, but that also has cooking contest. There are also some Facebook pages by invite only that where we share information about contests that might be coming up. But basically, Calling All Contestants, I've noted, does have quite a few contests listed there. So it's looking at that. And then if a person is really serious about entering, it's good to have an interest in what the product might be. It's hard to enter a contest if you don't like the product or don't have any interest in the product. So, that's something to keep in mind. And thinking, okay, I'm going to enter my Aunt Sally's favorite potato casserole recipe. Aunt Sally's favorite potato casserole recipe probably isn't going to cut it. You have to think on the cutting edge, something that's really going to get the sponsor's attention. Now, that's not always the case, Sometimes I overthink it. But to get the sponsor's attention. And then I think something that a lot of newbies do wrong is they don't read the rules. And you have to read the rules and how it's going to be judged. Because let's say most contests now have you enter a photo with your entry, and maybe you're terrible at taking photos and your food looks terrible. And perhaps you didn't notice that in the judging that 25% of the judging is on the appearance of the dish. So if your photo looks terrible, no matter how good the dish is, you're probably not going to get anywhere with it. Mm-hmm. So it's important to read the rules, when they have to be in, the maximum size or minimum size of the photo that you're submitting. If they say they want a short essay or a few sentences, how'd you come up with the idea? Then do that. Don't just skip it. But reading the rules, because it's really easy to miss something that might make a difference in how you submit it or if you submit it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, once you do, keep track of it. keep the recipe, of course, obviously you've typed it up, but, keep a file so you know what you've entered. Generally, once you've entered a specific recipe, it is no longer your property. It
Wow.
becomes the property of the sponsoring contest into which you entered it.
So you can't be entering it in a bunch of different contests.
No, you cannot. No.
Wow.
If the opportunity arose, would you audition to be on the Great American Baking Show?
Oh, gosh, I would be such a failure.
No.
Oh, I would. I would do awful. I actually watched an episode of that yesterday because I love the Great British Baking Show, or as you folks would say, Jabibo. So I wanted to see the American one, and it felt very much like Jabibo, and I really enjoyed it, so I will watch more. But there is so much pressure there. And even though you know that they have an idea what they're going to prepare beforehand, except for the technical, of course.
Yeah.
And I would not do well with that at all. Not at all. If I know what I'd be preparing ahead of time and could do it that way, I'd be okay. But, like some of those, like Chopped, I would be terrible at Chopped because you have to think on your feet. So no, that is one I would not consider.
Is there one you would consider?
Yes, there is actually. They had a cook-off. Joanna Gaines and her husband have the Magnolia Network, and they have the Silos baking contest. They had one last year where they pick the finalist, and you know what recipe you're preparing. So with that, I would do okay. So something like that I would enter. But if I had to think on my feet, and I just would not do well, because for me personally, I don't think on my feet in terms of cooking that well. Under pressure, put it that way. At home, yes, if I'm throwing stuff together, yes, but not under pressure.
Gotcha.
There was one, may I diverge here a moment?
Totally.
Okay, that was televised. It was for the Garlic Festival a few years ago, which they've discontinued the Garlic Festival altogether, basically. But that was being televised for the Cooking Channel, and I was one of the folks that they had chosen to highlight. And that was fun, but it was also miserable because it was outside. It was humid and hot, and they made us wear chef's coats.
Ugh.
So you had your clothes underneath and then the chef's coat. So that was hot. And then because they were filming me, there was a period of about 7 hours where I was mic'd up the whole time. And I had to get there early because I had to test the mic and all this. And so for 7 hours during this outside cook-off that was super hot, I was mic'd up. I had a camera person and a sound person with me almost the entire time. It was fun, but it was miserable.
Yeah.
So
Production is miserable.
Yes, yeah. So some cook-offs may not be quite so fun because you don't realize what goes on behind the scenes. You might, Justine, with your occupation, but it can be challenging. Put it that way.
There's always that hot summer episode of Jabibo where everyone complains about how hot it is. So
they do ice cream
like
that week.
Yeah.
Yes. But what was kind of funny and embarrassing, 7 hours. Okay, in 7 hours you have to use the bathroom, right? And they just had outside stalls. And so I had to use the bathroom. And I was mic'd up and I said, could you take the mic off of me? I need to use the bathroom. And they just said, don't worry about it. We won't listen.
No.
Like that Naked
You say,
Gun
turn it
movie.
off.
I said, turn it off anyway. They said they did. I figured, so what? I don't care.
Yeah. I think about that all the time on reality shows.
Yes.
So you were telling me recently, Mom, that you were recognized at the doctor's office as the local cooking lady. So what's it like to be a local legend?
Well, it's kind of funny. Early on, I did win a number of big contests, and the local newspaper would carry a story and photos and all this. And so people would say, oh, you're the lady from the newspaper. But there hasn't been a newspaper article in at least, I want to say 10 years. Wow. So, I was at the doctor's office, and the lady said, are you that lady who's in the newspaper with all the cooking and cooking contests and recipes? And I said, yes. So she had actually remembered reading those. And she said, I enjoyed reading those because they were just fun to read about. But it was funny because it had been quite some time. I didn't think anybody would remember that.
Well, you made an impression.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah. Must have been my lovely countenance in the photos. So.
Well, Mary, is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't mentioned?
Well, I would say we've kind of hit upon this, but for people who are thinking about it, go for it. It's fun. The only thing is there is the perseverance. There aren't that many contests. There are a lot of people who enter them. So just because you enter doesn't mean you're going to win. So, if you're interested, give it a try because it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. If you want to hear more of my mom and I cooking together, you can also check out an old episode in the back catalog called Side Dish, Meg Makes Claire's Angel Food Cake, in which I made angel food cake with mi madre, so check that out as well.
Yes.
And if you have any questions for Mary that you'd like to communicate, just reach out to us here at Pod Appétit, and we will get that comment or question to Mary. So please feel free to do so. As always, also be sure to check us out at podappetit.substack.com for more information. I'll put up some links to those cooking contest websites that Mary mentioned. So once again, Mary, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, you know what? I had a blast. It was fun. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks for being our number one listener.
Anytime.
Thanks for listening to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes.
Go to podappetitpodcast.com for all our episodes and links to everywhere you can find us online.
Also, be sure to subscribe to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes on your favorite podcatcher.